All right. Ready to dive deep into spending psychology? We're going to uncover some seriously surprising stuff about how our brains handle money, and it's all based on the research and articles you provided. We got Dan Ariely's Dollars and Cents. The guy's a master at explaining those quirks of behavioral economics,
Oh, yeah, he's great.
plus some fascinating studies and real-world examples that'll make you rethink your next trip to the store. Get ready to learn why that $60 shirt might not be the steal you think it is, how those limited time offers play tricks on your mind, and why sometimes the more effort you see, the more you're willing to pay.
It's going to be interesting.
First up, let's talk about relativity. Imagine walking into a high-end store like Harry Winston, surrounded by all those sparkling diamonds, and then suddenly you see these black pearls. They seem, well, luxurious almost by association, right?
Yeah, it's our brains playing tricks on us. See, we don't judge value in isolation. It's always in comparison to what's around us. Just like those optical illusions where circles appear different sizes because of their surrounding context. Our brains fall for the same kind of relativity trap when it comes to spending.
So it's almost like retailers are like setting the stage, creating a context that makes certain items seem more appealing.
Exactly. Remember JCPenney's attempt to ditch sales and just have fair and square pricing?
Yeah?
Total flop. See, without that anchor of an original price, shoppers had no reference point. A $60 shirt just felt like, well, $60 shirt, not a steal.
It makes so much sense. And Ariely has some other great examples in the book, too. He talks about how black pearls were practically worthless until a savvy dealer decided to display them alongside diamonds and other precious gems.
Oh, clever.
Suddenly, those same pearls seemed way more valuable.
Power of association. Our brains make connections, even if they're not always, logical. And retailers, oh, they are masters at exploiting this.
So next time you see a sale, it's worth taking a step back and asking yourself, is this truly a good price? Or am I just being influenced by the surrounding context?
All right, right.
Let's dive into another fascinating quirk. The pain of paying. It might sound odd, but paying for things, even things we enjoy, can trigger a sense of loss in our brains.
Makes sense.
Ariely actually opens this chapter with a story about his honeymoon. They went all out, splurging on those fancy hotels, amazing food. While they were on the trip, it felt incredible.
But then the bill arrives.
Exactly.
That's when reality sets in. Paying for things, even those enjoyable experiences, creates a kind of mental ouch. It's not just about the actual amount of money, it's the anticipation and the act of seeing that money leave our possession.
It's like we're programmed to avoid that feeling of loss.
Absolutely, and guess what? There's a whole industry built around helping us do just that.
Yeah.
Credit cards, online payment systems, automatic bill pay, they all act as buffers between us and that immediate pain of paying.
It's like there are these financial helmets shielding us from the impact, but here's the catch.
Yeah, these conveniences, while helpful in some ways, they can also make us less sensitive to the real cost of our purchases.
Right.
We become disconnected from the actual flow of money.
Ariely highlights this with a study he did with MIT students. They were asked to read online content and they were offered different payment options. Some prepaid, some paid at the end, and some made tiny micropayments with each click.
Interesting.
What's fascinating is, even though all the students paid the same total amount, those who made micropayments, constantly confronting the cost, they actually spent the least. Those who prepaid, on the other hand, spent the most. Really highlights how these seemingly small choices in how we pay can have a significant impact on our spending habits. Makes you wonder, what are your financial helmets? And are they actually costing you more in the long run?
I like that. Financial helmets.
All right, get ready for this next one. It's about how seemingly random numbers can influence how much we're willing to spend. It's called the anchoring effect.
Okay.
So Ariely uses the example of Andy Warhol's Montauk estate. After his death, it was listed for a jaw-dropping $50 million. It eventually sold for much less, but still, how did it even get that initial price tag?
That's anchoring in action. You see that huge number, 50 million, and even though it's likely absurd, your brain latches onto it.
Wow.
It becomes a reference point, influencing your perception of what the estate is actually worth.
It's like that number sets an anchor, and our judgments swing around it even if we know it's not entirely rational.
And this isn't just about real estate. It affects everything from the price we're willing to pay for a toaster to how much we'll spend on a bottle of wine. There was even this study where researchers asked MIT students to write down the last 2 digits of their social security numbers.
Wait, their social security numbers? What does that have to do with anything?
Well, get this. Those students with higher Social Security numbers actually ended up bidding significantly more for the same items in an auction. Those random digits acted as anchors, influencing their perceived value.
That's wild. So those suggested retail prices and limited time offers we see everywhere, those are all carefully calculated anchors designed to make us think we're getting a deal.
Precisely. They play on our tendency to compare and create a sense of urgency. Next time you see a sale, ask yourself, am I anchored to an inflated price? Is this really a bargain? Or am I being swayed by clever marketing tactics?
It's like a mental game we need to be aware of.
Yeah.
Now, for our final point in this part of the deep dive, let's talk about the power of language. Words don't just describe things, they shape our experiences, and they can even influence how much we're willing to pay.
Absolutely.
Ariely shares a story about a woman named Cheryl who was working late one night and ordered takeout. Her coworker, Brian, offered her some of his fancy pasta.
Oh, nice.
But Cheryl wasn't that impressed. She figured it was just, basic office takeout.
Yeah.
Until Brian revealed that he actually ordered it from this super expensive, trendy restaurant. Suddenly, that same pasta seemed way more appealing.
It's all about the presentation.
Right.
The description, the language used, it completely changed her perception. Words can make us pay more attention, savor the experience, and even justify a higher price.
Think about all those marketing buzzwords we encounter. Artisanal, handcrafted, fair trade, organic.
Those words, they evoke certain feelings. Effort, exclusivity, quality. They shift our perception of value, sometimes even if the product itself isn't actually that different.
And Ariely even brings up Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer. Remember how Tom convinced his friends that whitewashing a fence was a privilege? He totally reframed the experience through language, turning a chore into something desirable.
It's a classic example of how words can be used to manipulate our sense of value. And it's happening all the time in the marketplace.
So the next time you're considering a purchase, pay attention to the language being used. Are those fancy words adding real value, or are they just influencing you to spend more? It's a question worth asking.
I think so.
And that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into the quirky psychology of spending. We've explored how relativity, the pain of paying, anchoring, and even the power of language can subtly influence our financial decisions.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll uncover even more surprising biases that can secretly shape our spending habits.
Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into the psychology of spending, uncovering those hidden biases that can impact our financial decisions. Last time we talked about relativity, pain of paying, anchoring, and the power of language.
Right. Now we're going to explore the allure of free, those strange ways we value things we own, and how our expectations can shape our actual experiences.
Okay, free. I think we all love a good deal, but is free really just about the price, or is there something deeper going on?
Definitely more than just a price tag. Free acts as a powerful psychological trigger. It kind of short-circuits our normal decision-making process.
I see what you mean.
Think about it. When something is free, we often skip that internal cost-benefit analysis. We don't weigh the pros and cons as carefully.
Makes sense.
We just grab it because, well, it's free.
Yeah, I know. I've definitely fallen for that trap before.
Ariely's is a great example in the book, choosing between a free chocolate and a 1-cent chocolate. Logically, the difference is practically non-existent.
Right.
But emotionally, free wins every time.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like that free label just overrides our common sense.
And this can have some interesting consequences. Ariely talks about how this free effect can make it really hard to start paying for something we've previously gotten for free. Imagine you've been using this awesome song identifying app for free, and suddenly they introduce a 99-cent charge.
Even though it's a tiny amount, I can see how that shift from free to paid would feel like a huge hurdle to overcome.
Exactly. We get so accustomed to that zero price that anything above it feels like a loss, even if it's, a totally reasonable price.
So it seems like the lesson here is to be cautious of those free offers.
Right.
They might lock us into patterns that aren't actually in our best interests long term.
For sure.
Now let's talk about something I know I struggle with getting attached to my possessions. I once had this old beat-up coffee mug that I absolutely refused to throw away.
That sounds like a classic case of the endowment effect. Ownership creates a strange kind of bond, making us overvalue things simply because they belong to us.
It's like that feeling of, this is mine.
There was this interesting study at Duke University where students were given basketball tickets through a lottery. The students who won the tickets were willing to sell them for a much higher price than the students who didn't have tickets are willing to pay.
So even though it was the same game, same seats,
That's easy.
the mere fact of ownership inflated their perceived value.
Precisely. And there's another study, this time with coffee mugs. Of course. Researchers found that students who were randomly given mugs valued them at twice the price as students who didn't have mugs.
I can see how this could have major financial implications. Like when it comes to selling a house or a car, we might hold out for a price that's like way above market value just because we're emotionally attached.
Absolutely. The endowment effect can really cloud our judgment. And it's not just about sentimental value. This bias can also trip us up when it comes to investment.
Oh, I see what you mean. We might be reluctant to sell a stock, even if it's not performing well, because we're anchored to that price we paid for it.
That's where the concept of loss aversion comes in. That pain of losing something often outweighs the pleasure of gaining something of equal value.
So rather than cutting our losses, we might hold on to those losing investments in the hopes of recouping what we've lost, even if it's not the smartest financial move.
A classic battle between our emotions and our logic.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the power of expectations. We've already touched on how language and descriptions can shape our perception of value, but can our expectations actually change our reality?
While it's not magic, there's definitely a strong psychological component at play. Ariely gives the example of a brand name painkiller versus a generic painkiller.
Right. In the study, people actually experienced greater pain relief when they took the brand name pill, even though it was chemically identical to the generic one.
It seems that the expectation of effectiveness, driven by the brand name and often the higher price tag, it created a real physiological response.
So our beliefs about a product can actually influence our experience of it.
And it's not just limited to painkillers. There's a whole body of research exploring how expectations influence performance in various domains. For instance, studies have shown that reminding women about gender stereotypes before a math test can lead to poorer performance.
Oh, wow.
It's like their expectations become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's fascinating. It's almost like our brains are creating the reality we expect. But on a more positive note, are there examples where expectations can work to our advantage?
Definitely. Reminding Asian women about their ethnicity before a math test has been shown to actually boost their performance. This suggests that their expectations are linked to those positive stereotypes about Asian proficiency in math, and those expectations give them an edge.
So if our expectations can be so powerful, how do we harness that power when it comes to spending? How do we avoid falling into those expectation traps?
First, be aware of the sources of your expectations. Are they based on real information? Or are they driven by marketing hype, social media trends, or that pressure to keep up with others? Once you understand where those expectations are coming from, you can start to question them.
That makes sense. It's like taking a step back and asking, do I really need this? Or am I just caught up in the hype?
Exactly. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we need the newest gadget, the fanciest car, or the most extravagant vacation to be happy. It's no wonder our expectations get inflated.
So maybe the key is to adjust our expectations, focus on what truly matters, and be more mindful of how those external influences shape our perception of value.
We'll be digging deeper into practical strategies for managing these biases in the final part of our deep dive.
I can't wait. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into spending psychology. We've uncovered some pretty fascinating biases that can affect our financial decisions. Everything from the relativity trap and the pain of paying to the allure of free and the power of expectations.
Right, and now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
How do these biases impact our long-term financial well-being, especially when it comes to saving for the future?
That's a great point. Saving isn't always the most exciting topic, but it's definitely crucial. So how do those sneaky biases we've been talking about make it even harder to squirrel away money for later?
Well, saving requires us to prioritize the future over the present.
Right.
And as humans, we're wired for instant gratification.
Yeah.
We want those rewards now, not later.
It's like that classic marshmallow experiment. Give a kid a marshmallow now or wait and get two later.
Oh, yeah.
Most kids can't resist that instant sugary treat.
Exactly. And it's not just kids, right? We all grapple with this tension. The pleasure of buying something today often outweighs that abstract benefit of saving for retirement.
Yeah.
Even though we know it's important.
Plus, it feels like our world is constantly tempting us to spend. Everywhere we look, ads, social media, even our friends and family, there are messages encouraging us to buy more stuff.
And those desires fueled by marketing and social pressures.
Yeah.
They can easily override our rational intentions to save. We start the month with a budget in mind,
Right.
but then a tempting sale pops up,
Hmm.
or we get caught up in the moment. And suddenly, our plans go out the window.
So if we're battling our own brains and a culture that encourages us to spend, how can we possibly win the saving game?
That's where the idea of pre-commitment comes in.
Okay.
It's about outsmarting our future selves by setting up systems that make saving automatic and unavoidable.
Like we're tying ourselves to the mast, Ulysses style, to resist those spending sirens?
Precisely. Ariely talks about this Ulysses contract approach.
Hmm.
One of the most effective strategies is through retirement savings plans like 401ks.
Right.
Money is deducted from your paycheck before you even see it, so you're essentially saving without even thinking about it.
It's like tricking your brain into being financially responsible.
In a way, yes. Ariely also suggests other pre-commitment strategies, like automatic transfers to a savings account, or using a prepaid debit card for discretionary spending.
Oh, interesting.
By limiting access to funds, we create those boundaries that make it harder to overspend.
There's also the idea of earmarking, designating specific amounts of money for certain goals, like a down payment on a house or a vacation.
Right, by mentally separating our money into different buckets, it's less tempting to dip into savings for those impulse buys.
Speaking of tempting, Ariely mentions this interesting study done in Kenya, where people who received a golden coin to track their savings progress saved significantly more than those who only received text message reminders.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It seems that having a visual, tangible symbol of their commitment made the goal more real and motivating.
Maybe we could all use a little golden coin reminder to keep us on track. But beyond these strategies, I think the biggest takeaway for me is the power of awareness.
Absolutely. The more we understand these biases, the better equipped we are to make, conscious, deliberate choices.
Yeah.
It's about shining a light on those hidden forces and questioning our assumptions.
And sometimes, maybe the best strategy is simply to ignore the noise.
Yeah.
Remember those Fidelity investors whose portfolios performed the best because they'd completely forgotten about them?
It's a good reminder that sometimes the less we tinker and obsess over our finances, the better off we might be.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening.
It has.
We've learned that our brains are wired in some pretty quirky ways, and those quirks can have a big impact on our spending habits.
But the good news is that by understanding these biases, we can start to outsmart them and make more intentional choices with our money.
It's about taking control, aligning our spending with our values, and building a brighter financial future.
And remember, you have more power than you think.
Right?
You just need to know how to wield it.
So what other surprising biases might be lurking beneath the surface waiting to be discovered? That's something to ponder as we continue our journey of understanding this fascinating world of human behavior and finance. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Did you get any of that?